Satyamayi Parame Satyamayi Parame Satyamayi Parame Satyam Jnanam Satyam Jnanam Jyotir Aravinda Jyotir Aravinda Jyotir Aravinda. So we begin with a little story. It's a beautiful story from Shyama Kumari's series. Shyama Kumari has written 3 volumes on little anecdotes and stories about Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Very beautiful. You must pick it up if you haven't. And this is a story from there. So there was a person in the story, he's just called D. So D had a great connection with the mother. And the story goes that once he was traveling by bus and the windshield of the bus somehow came loose and the glass hit his face. And people thought that he would be dead or very badly wounded. But he didn't have a scratch on his face. It was as if somebody had somehow controlled the glass as it hit his face. Now later on in 1973, when he heard that the mother had left the body, he rushed. He didn't live in Pondicherry, but he'd come to visit her very often. So he rushed to the ashram, and by the time he reached, the mother's body was already put into the samadhi. Now this boy was heartbroken because he was one of those whose whole life was the mother. So the fact that he'd not even sort of had darshan of her and she had left her body, he decided he'll commit suicide. He said there's no point in living. Now mother's not there and what will I live for? So he was sitting near the samadhi planning, where will I go and commit suicide? How will I do it? He was involved with all that. And a person came and told him, come to the meditation room, you know, where mother's bed was brought. And he was sitting and sobbing at the samadhi and said, I'm not interested, I'm not coming. But it was almost like something made him get up. He's saying, no, I'm not coming, I'm not coming. But saying that, he got up and his feet were as if carried to the meditation hall. And there he saw mother sitting on the bed, smiling at him and so living that he thought that these ashramites had concocted a story that she died so that they could spread the news that she had resurrected. And he says, I remember thinking, Arey, but even Nalini Das part of this conspiracy, how can it be and all? And he's thinking of all this, and then he sees mother doing this to him. And he's still thinking that the mother's living and this whole thing was just made up. So she does this to him and then she disappears in bright light. So then he was so happy to get a vision of her that he forgets all about his thoughts of suicide. So this is just to tell you, the title of this story is, of this talk is She Carries Me. So this man was sobbing at the samadhi. He didn't know, his mind was saying, no, I'm not going to go to the meditation room. But something bigger than him carried him, took him to the meditation room to give him a glimpse of what he needed to see. So this is not just in his life, this is something that happens in all our lives. You know, in Savitri there's a line which says, which calls mother our beloved despot. Despot is a tyrant. A tyrant is somebody whose will supersedes everyone else's will. So thankfully, whatever mother wills for us, she somehow has a way to do it beyond whether we say yes or no. Because actually we think we are doing, but it's really mother who's doing everything. And it's when what I call mother is not this form. We have to remember that mother is the Adi Shakti, the first force that made creation happen. And the mother is eternal. She has always been, she will always be. And that eternal Adi Shakti which births creation, becomes creation, always carries creation in her. Like a physical mother carries the baby during gestation, during the 9 months, then births it, carries it around till it's weak. Eventually the physical mother's form goes away and the person has to live. But the divine mother is a womb which is always around us. No, it's called the Hiranya Garbha, the golden womb of protection that always, always, always carries us. So when do we feel that we are not being carried by her? When do we feel that? When do we actually feel that nothing's protecting me, nothing's carrying me? When things don't go your way, when things go contrary to your expectation, when you fail in your efforts, that time you feel, where is mother? Why isn't she here? Why isn't she making me succeed? Why isn't she making things work out? But that's the time sometimes when we are carried most through it. Because I'll give you an example. Once I'd gone to attend a fabric painting class. So I was given a yellow t-shirt and my teacher gave me fabric paints and said, paint whatever you want. I'm not great with art, I'm not you. So I chose the easiest thing to paint. I thought I'll paint a pink heart, simplest to paint. But I didn't take the right proportion of water. I took too much water and it just looked like a blob of nothing. And I thought my t-shirt was destroyed, my art was destroyed. And then my teacher took a fabric felt pen, you have pens which work, and she outlined it to form a beautiful people leaf. And I thought, wow, this is so much nicer than the cliched heart that I had thought I would paint. So that was a great life lesson for me, that I intend to do something and I may fail, but somehow life works it out so that what finally comes out is much better than what I intended. So there are these beautiful words of Sri Aurobindo. If we fail in our immediate aim, it is because he has intended it. Often our failure or ill result is the right road to a truer issue than immediate and complete success. So beautiful. Often our failure or ill result is the right road to a truer issue than immediate and complete success. If we stumble, it is to learn in the end the secret of a more perfect walk. If we stumble, a child stumbles, and that's how it gets up and walks and learns to walk. So if we stumble, it's to learn in the end the secret of a more perfect walk. So when we are going through the sticky periods of our life, when things aren't going our way, what do we need to do at that time? Offer it to the divine and remember that we are not abandoned by grace because things aren't going our way. I keep telling in China there's a curse, may all your wishes be fulfilled. Because if all your wishes would be fulfilled, you'd be the biggest mess on earth. We don't know how to wish for the right things. So often if life contradicts our wishes for what we want it to be, it's still grace, and it takes a lot of patience to accept that. So these are beautiful words by Elif Shafak. Patience does not mean to passively endure. Okay, we feel patience is to just grit my teeth and say, oh my God, when is this going to get over? It means to be far-sighted enough to trust the end result of a process. It means to be far-sighted enough to trust the end result of a process. It means to look at the thorn and see the rose, to look at the night and see the dawn. So the thorn is the difficult part of our life. Patience means you look at it and say, no, wait. It's difficult now, but Mother is working it out. The end will be perfect. Impatience means to be so short-sighted as to not see the outcome. Lovers of God never run out of patience, for they know the time needed for the crescent moon to become full. Lovers of God never run out of patience, for they know the time for the crescent moon to become full. So if you see a crescent moon and you don't know about the cycle of the moon, you'll think the moon is gone, right? But the moon is there. It's just a play of light that it's appearing to be a crescent. And the full moon cycle will come through when the whole moon will appear again. So lovers of God never run out of patience. They know the time it takes for a crescent moon to become full. So now there's this poem. Just feel it rather than hear it. In fact, our whole morning yoga class was based on this poem. It's called The Soft Velvet of Her Palm. Okay, the mother's palm is like a soft velvet. The gaze is trapped in a tunnel vision, flitting haplessly from this is good to that is bad. Our gaze is a tunnel vision, a narrow vision going to this is good, that is bad. Till the realm of seamless good beckons from the beyond. So this realm of seamless good is Bhadram, right? The eternal good. So right now when I'm living with my mind, I'm constantly judging things as this is good, that is bad. Till another vision opens in the heart, the realm of seamless good. The knowing that in God's providence, nothing is bad. Sri Aurobindo says every seeming bad is good in the making. So that vision is what Sri Aurobindo calls the Kalyan Shraddha in our heart. The faith that wherever I go, every turning out of life is only leading to good. So that's the realm of the seamless good beckons from the beyond, inviting the being to release its tiring oscillations from I like this to I dislike that, and rest in the knowing that she alone does all, controls all, salvages all. So there's nothing to like and dislike, right? Because whatever comes to you, it's coming by the mother's will, right? So if she's doing all, salvaging all, controlling all, wherever she's taking me, there must be some wisdom and some good in it. So, and that subsuming the supersets, the subsets of like and dislike, is the superset of our omnipresent love. So this is a set of I like, this is a set of I dislike. Subsuming means surrounding. Surrounding the sets of I like, I dislike is the superset of her omnipresent love. So her love is bringing me things I like, bringing me things that I dislike. And if her love is bringing me things that I dislike, even those things must be for my highest good, right? Then comes the much awaited leap of faith that lands me in the soft velvet of her palm. Aeons of fatigue release into repose. So when I really feel the soft velvet of her palm, eons of fatigue, so many lifetimes I've become tired trying to push myself, struggling to survive. But when I find the soft velvet of her palms, eons of fatigue release into repose, rest, as I sink eternally into its softness, consenting to be carried by it forever. This soft velvet cushions all existence as well. What is this soft velvet? Her palm. So this soft velvet of her palm cushions all existence as well. It's not just carrying me, it's carrying everything. And every thorn is justified by the rose to come. Because that soft velvet carries it. It carries every thorn to its moment of flowering into a rose. Yeah? So that's the soft velvet of a palm. So we'll try something we did in the yoga class this morning. You may not get its full effect, but we'll try. Okay? So, if you're a right-handed person, then put the left hand on the right hand. If you're a lefty, then put the right hand on the left. Then if you're a lefty, then left hand below. If you're a righty, then right hand below. So your active hand below and your passive hand on top. Okay. Now, see, mother keeps saying that you can live a truth only when you live it with the body, right? That's why I keep emphasizing the importance of a conscious asana practice. So now loosen the upper hand on the lower hand, loosen it. And think of the lower palm as the soft velvet of that palm. And the upper palm, let it release all effort. Let it demuscularize completely. And very slowly, let the upper palm do nothing. Let it fall a dead weight in the lower palm and carry the upper palm to rest just below your throat. And then very slowly release. Keep loosening. It will take a lot of body consciousness to undo effort in the upper palm. The upper palm will keep trying to help the movement. Let go, let go, let go, drop down. So maybe the first time it may not have worked for many of you because the upper palm kept helping the lower palm to lift it. So now try one more time. Really loosen the palm and very slowly let the upper palm experience being lifted with no effort on its part. She carries me, as if the upper palm is happily making this mantra its own. She carries me. Now the third time involved the whole body. In the morning we did it in asanas, which makes it easier. But whatever position you're in an asana in a way. So now, when the upper palm drops into the lower palm, let the buttocks drop into the floor or the chair. And let the buttocks remain dropped as you lift the upper palm slowly over many breaths to your heart and then down. Keep dropping the buttocks. Keep dropping the legs, the feet into wherever there's a contact point of a surface below. Let the body part drop into that part. And now just play. Let the lower hand carry the upper hand any which way, in waves, in circles, but if the upper palm helps the lower palm, then the magic is lost. Teach the upper palm to do nothing, just be carried in any direction. And then slowly relax, shut your eyes, and I'm going to read this poem again, link it to your experience. The soft velvet of her palm. The gaze is trapped in a tunnel vision, flitting haplessly from this is good to that is bad, till the realm of seamless good beckons from the beyond, inviting the being to release its tiring oscillation from I like this to I dislike that, and rest in the knowing that she alone does all, controls all, salvages all, and subsuming the subsets of like and dislike is the superset of her omnipresent love. Then comes the much awaited leap of faith that lands me in the soft velvet of her palm. Eons of fatigue release into repose as I sink eternally into its softness, consenting to be carried by it forever. This soft velvet cushions all existence as well, and every thorn is justified by the rose to come. So does anyone want to share anything that you felt in this simple physical exercise? You want to? What was the feeling? Yeah. Okay. While carrying the palm.
Yeah, and then I kept getting up, but I couldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
This the first time I felt very restless
Huh.
because my left hand was like constantly trying to help, or it was like moving.
Huh.
And then the second time it was a little less restless, but even then somewhere I could feel like the presence. And then the third time when we were moving our hands in different directions, I feel like that's when I completely like my entire left hand was just relying on my right hand, and even when I took it in directions, like it was like I knew that something's like holding that hand, so like I didn't have to do anything.
And how did your mind body feel?
I just felt like there's some amount of trust.
Yeah, and if one part of your body relaxes, somehow we are such an interconnected unit, your whole body will relax. You will feel a lightness in your whole body when you do this. That's why repetition is important. The first time you won't succeed because you're too used to doing, you're not used to being carried. Second time you'll succeed more, third time more. And those of you who do asanas, wherever there's a contact, just feel the soft velvet of the palm and drop into that. Your whole asana practice will change. So now this is a passage from A.S. Dalal's Eckhart Tolle and Sri Aurobindo. He's compared the two. So A.S. Dalal says, enlightenment, says Eckhart, is not something that you can make happen. It is something that is almost the opposite, something you allow to happen. Therefore, he regards the term practice as not quite right, because practice implies effort to bring about something, the practice Eckhart teaches may be summed up in these words. So all of us want to, well, find peace, joy, happiness, what is called enlightenment. But what Eckhart Tolle says is that you don't have to do anything to get enlightened. You have to just be and allow yourself to be carried into that state of enlightenment. Yeah? Because sometimes, like in many things, our effort really gets in the way. Like in this movement, my effort to move would actually get in the way of experiencing the beauty of this movement, right? And this is a lesson in life. Sometimes my effort to do things, push things, do excess, it gets in the way of the natural organic flow of life that is carrying me. So Eckhart says, stay always present, remain alert, pay attention only to the present moment. Observe all that happens inside you as a detached witness of your thoughts and feelings. Become aware also of the consciousness that observes. Cultivate thoughtless awareness, which does not label or analyze whatever you perceive inside you or outside. Accept all that you observe inside. Allow that all that happens in your external life. Give up resistance. Say yes to what is. Allow the power of now to transform you. This is a very beautiful and subtle practice. What Tolle is saying is, if you're always convinced that there's this invisible hand carrying you, taking you wherever you are in the moment, then why resist? If Mother has brought me to this moment, let me say yes to it and see where it goes. So it's about, see, surrender is an eternal yes of consciousness, right? Resistance is saying no, I want this moment to be other than what it is. But surrender is saying, okay, you brought me here, let me see what it leads to. Even when it comes to feeling unpleasant emotions, it's so beautiful to remember that every negative emotion is also carried in Mother's arms of infinite positivity, right? So if supposing I'm feeling an emotion of fear, so beautiful to remember, wow, Mother's all-powerful arms are even carrying this fear. I don't have to fight with it. I have to just wait. She's carrying the fear. She'll carry it where it needs to go. So very often when we feel negative emotions, we get all caught up in fighting them, wanting them to go away, and sometimes whatever you resist persists. But if you just remember that everything I call me is carried by the Mother, my emotions, my thoughts, my body. So if she's taken me to it, she'll take me through it. Let me wait and watch. Let me just be an observer, even of the negative emotions, instead of fighting them. So that's what Tolle is saying. Just say a wholehearted yes to this moment, because that's when you're saying yes to Mother, because that form of Mother is not going to speak to you mostly and ask you yes or no. But the real essence of Mother is the universe. The whole universe is the body of the Mother, no? So wherever you're carried, it's carried in the essence that the Mother is. So learn to say yes to it. That's what Tolle is saying. Of the two attitudes in spiritual practice spoken of by Ramakrishna, alluded to earlier, the baby monkey attitude of reliance on personal effort and the baby cat attitude of surrender and reliance on the divine power, you know this, no? Ramakrishna often used to say that there are two ways you can connect to the Mother. The way baby monkey, you've seen a baby monkey, it clings to the mother, and a baby cat, the mother cat just carries the kitten in its mouth, right? So either you let her carry you or you try to cling to her. So Obviously, in spirituality, the way a baby cat allows itself to be carried is much better. The baby monkey attitude of reliance on personal effort and the baby cat attitude of surrender and reliance on the divine power. The latter is more fitting description of practice as taught by Eckhart. Not personal effort but presence does it all, says Eckhart. The only personal effort is to choose and allow presence. What is presence? Presence is awareness. Whenever you're feeling something, instead of being identified with it, step back, watch it. The moment you watch it, you're allowing presence to arise. And presence will do what needs to be done.
Sometimes how to get that strength to become aware and that time not fear or something.
So if fear comes, firstly, just din it into your consciousness that the real you is not touched by fear. The fear is happening in the vital, some part in the mental. But the real you is outside the fear. And then start by watching your breath. And after watching your breath, watch the sounds. You're inviting the witness consciousness to come forward. It's difficult to witness fear because you're too identified with it. But start by witnessing what you can. The breath is easy to witness. The sounds are easy to witness. The body is easy to witness. Now, after witnessing all this, already your fear will become less. Then how to witness, I can't tell you. The actual witnessing of the emotion or thought is always a gift of grace. That mother makes it happen, but keep working for it and it will happen, and it's extremely liberating. But till then, at least it's good to always remind yourself that the real you is not touched by the fear, that the fear is also not real, it's just a conditioning from your past. So, not personal effort but present does it all, says Eckhart. The only personal effort is to choose and allow presence. But even choosing presence, says Eckhart, is only seemingly personal. What really happens is that present chooses to arise, though the one in whom present arises has the impression of doing a spiritual practice for presence to arise. That's exactly what he's saying. You think you have chosen presence by stepping into the witness, but actually presence has chosen to arise in you. Which means you just stay poised as an observer, and when the right moment comes, that presence arises in you as a gift of grace. So it is a helpful perspective to think that present arises because one chooses presence, though from a deeper perspective, presence arises because it chooses to arise. Expressing the truth of both perspectives, Sri Aurobindo states, he who chooses the infinite has been chosen by the infinite. You haven't chosen presence. Presence has chosen you and it has arisen. Attention as viewed by Eckhart is deeper in another way than attention as ordinarily understood. He says that doing one thing at a time, which is how one Zen master defined the essence of Zen, means to be total in what you do, to give it your complete attention. This is surrendered action. Action done with total attention or surrendered action is the same as what Gita teaches, performing action not as a means for something else, but as an end in itself. The Gita's celebrated doctrine of desireless action teaches performance of action without the desire for the fruit of action. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, attention is part of the state of remaining conscious and vigilant. The mother states one must be quite awake. One must be constantly in a very attentive state of observation. To be in this state of attentive observation, you must have, so to say, antennae everywhere, which are in constant contact with your true center of consciousness. You register everything, you organize everything, and in this way you cannot be taken unawares. The development of experience in its rapidity, its amplitude, the intensity and the power of its results depends primarily in the beginning of the path and long after on the aspiration and personal effort of the sadhaks. Again, this is again comparing Toll and Sri Aurobindo. The process of yoga is a turning of the human soul from the egoistic state of consciousness absorbed in the outward appearances and attractions of things to a higher state in which the transcendent and universal can pour itself into the individual mold and transform it. This is very beautiful. This is Sri Aurobindo's words. Hear it again. The process of yoga is a turning of the human soul from the egoistic state of consciousness absorbed in the outward appearances and attractions of things to a higher state in which the transcendent and universal can pour itself into the individual mold and transform it. So right now we are controlled by the ego. Whatever we do for the ego. But yoga is a turning of our state of consciousness from these egoistic pursuit to a state of receptivity where the source consciousness can pour itself into us and change us. The first determining element of the Siddhi is therefore the intensity of the turning, the force which directs the soul inwards, the power of aspiration of the heart, the force of the will, the concentration of the mind, the perseverance, the determination of the applied energy are the measure of the intensity. So aspiration is what? Aspiration is the urge of the deepest inside us to reclaim the truth of our being that we've lost. Yeah, we are all living divorced from what we really are. So aspiration is a search to reclaim that, to go home in a sense. The ideal sadhak should be able to say in the biblical phrase, Sri Aurobindo says, "My zeal for the Lord has eaten me up." It is this zeal for the Lord, utsa, the zeal of the whole nature for its divine results, vyakulta, the heart's eagerness for the attainment of the divine that devours the ego and breaks up the limitations of its petty and narrow mold for the full and wide reception of that which it seeks. The personal effort in Sri Aurobindo's yoga is a triple labor of aspiration, rejection and surrender. Aspiration is the call of the mind, the heart and the physical being for peace, light, force and spiritual realization. Rejection is a refusal of the ignorant movements of one's mental, vital and physical nature which stand in the way of spiritual realization, being contrary to or incompatible with the truth of one's being. So Toll says do nothing, just be alert, alert and present, and the presence will arise. Sri Aurobindo gives us the triple formula. They are just different parts of aspiration, rejection and surrender. Mother says, your work, so mother brings together both. What does she say? Your work can never be good if you go on thinking of the next thing. For work, it is the present that is most important. The past should not drag you behind. The future should not pull you forward. You must be fully concentrated on the present, on what you're doing. You must be so concentrated on what you're doing that it is as if the salvation of the whole world depended only upon your work. So Mother's saying a beautiful thing: when you're working, don't think about the past or the future. Be so concentrated on the present as if the salvation of the whole world depends on the work you're doing. Yeah? In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, the essential meaning of surrender is self-giving. The Hindu concept of samarpan, inadequately rendered in English by surrender. So it's so beautiful in Sanskrit. Arpan is offered, sama is fully offered is samarpan. Now we don't have any English word that, you have to use two words, fully offered. So we say surrender, but it doesn't quite capture the meaning of what samarpan is. So, Hindu concept of samarpan, which Sri Aurobindo describes as the central secret of the Gita. It means the consecration of everything in oneself to the divine, not insisting on one's ideas and desires, but allowing the divine truth to replace them by its knowledge and will. So I was telling you about these vignettes of Shyama Kumari. There's another very sweet story of these are all stories of when Mother and Sri Aurobindo were in their bodies. So there was one sadhak who had come with his family, wife and children, to the ashram when Mother was in her body. And he worked for an ashram department, and he really had no means of really earning, because there the ashram provided and you offer your services. That's how they lived. Now for a certain festival, it was almost a ritual in his community that his wife and children should be given new clothes. And the wife, she told him that I need 300 rupees to get clothes for all of us. And this man said, well, this year, it was the first year they were at the ashram. Earlier when he was working in his own hometown, of course he had the means. So he said, well, this year we'll do without it because I don't have 300 rupees. So the wife said, no, we don't need to do without it once we've come to the Mother. I'll pray to the Mother for 300 rupees. So she prayed to the Mother, and that evening a cousin of his came from somewhere and gifted the family exactly 300 rupees. So we feel it's so silly to not do anything and just pray, but sometimes the wisest thing is to pray, because if the Mother has said no, every sincere prayer is answered, but it has to be sincere. The Gita expresses this teaching about absolute self-giving in Krishna's words. Whatever thou doest, whatever thou enjoyest, whatever thou sacrificest, whatever thou givest, whatever energy of tapasya of the soul's will or effort thou puttest forth, make it an offering unto me. So when I work and I'm really doing it in this bhav of samarpan offered to you, then automatically I may not be so attached to success or failure, because if I'm convinced that, okay, I'm giving myself as a tool in your hand, you're using that tool to do work. So if the outcome is successful, the success belongs to you. If I fail, the failure is also yours. But these are easy words, very, very difficult to do, because we may mentally understand this, but when we are doing it, the old conditioning will keep telling us, no, I'm thinking, I'm planning, I'm executing. But we keep trying, we keep reminding ourselves that I'm not really the doer. If she carries me, she's carrying me even through this work, right? So whatever I do, I offer it to her, and then actually don't feel bad about the failure and don't feel excited about the success. At least keep it as a goal in mind. Then of course it's a long journey to actually reach there. So A.S. Dalal says, in Ekhart's teaching, surrender means relinquishing the resistance and fighting mode of the egoic self towards the universe. It means yielding to the flow of life instead of opposing it. It means allowing what is to be, saying yes to what is, accepting the present moment and what the Buddha described as the suchness of the moment without reservation. This concept of surrender as acceptance of what the universe brings is akin to the Hindu concept of nati, resignation or submission to the will of God. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga and in the Gita, surrender includes both passive resignation and active self-offering to the will of the divine. So in Buddhism, in Tol's yoga, it's about just saying yes to what it is. It's passive. But Sri Aurobindo has brought another angle. Say yes to what it is and actively offer yourself to the divine in the moment while saying yes to the moment. So, Sri Aurobindo says, resignation is the basis of a kind of religious equality, submission to the divine will, a patient bearing of the cross, a submissive forbearance. In the Gita, this element takes the more ample form of an entire surrender of the whole being to God. It is not merely a passive submission, but an active self-giving, nor only a seeing and an accepting of the divine will in all things, but a giving up of one's own will to be the instrument of the master of the works. So beautiful, that state when you give up your own will and you just offer your will to God, that let your will be my will. Sri Aurobindo says, always indeed it is the higher power that acts. Our sense of personal effort and aspiration comes from the attempt of the egoistic mind to identify itself in a wrong and imperfect way with the workings of the divine force. So in everything we do, Sri Aurobindo says it's the higher power that's doing it. But our sense of personal effort makes us identify with the doing in a wrong and imperfect way. In the world, we act with the sense of egoism. We claim the universal forces that work in us as our own. We claim as the effect of our personal will, wisdom, force, virtue, the selective, formative, progressive action of the transcendent in this frame of mind, life and body. Enlightenment brings to us the knowledge that ego is only an instrument. We begin to perceive and feel that these things are our own in the sense that they belong to our supreme and integral self, one with the transcendent, not to the instrumental ego. So when we move towards enlightenment, we just know that all our doing belongs to the mother inside us, the Krishna inside us, not to the ego. Our limitations and distortions are our contribution to the working. So when we did this movement of the hand, how many of you are remembering to take off from that and seating your buttocks? Really, you forgot? How many of you are remembering that? You are? You keep forgetting that, no? But that's what When you surrender with the body, that's when you can really live it. I keep telling you, Mother says that you live a truth when you live it with the body. So keep remembering that. So when we were doing this movement with the hand, you saw that when the upper hand tried to move, it was distorted. Adya said that it didn't feel good. But when the upper hand really surrendered, then it was such a free flowing, beautiful movement. So, when the human ego realizes that its will is a tool, its wisdom, ignorance and childishness, its power an infant's groping, its virtue a pretentious impurity, and learns to trust itself to that which transcends it, that is its salvation. When the human ego realizes that its will is a tool, it doesn't really have any free will. The higher will works with it through its own will, and we think it's our will. Remember the story of the man I started with, the man who was crying at the samadhi, thinking that now the mother is gone, I can't live. And he was thinking of suicide. His will was going in one way. But something pulled him out of the samadhi and took him to the meditation room, right? So the higher will worked through him. He thought it's my will and my thought. But there was a higher will working through his will even then. So, it's wisdom, ignorance and childishness. So when we realize that our likes and dislikes are not very relevant, our wisdom is basically what I like, what I dislike, right? Normally in life, our wisdom is limited to our judgments of things. I like this, I don't like this. But if you really reach a point where you see, you know that poem we read out, subsuming the subsets of like and dislike is the superset of our omnipresent love, then you won't take your likes and dislikes very meaningfully. And in the Gita, so beautiful, Krishna gives various characteristics of a devotee of his. And one of the characteristic is, my devotee is in a constant state of Shubh Ashubh Parityag. Shubh, I like, auspicious. Ashubh, I don't like. Parityag, completely renounced. He has completely renounced the distinction between fortunate, unfortunate, I like this, I don't like this, and takes whatever comes to him as my prasad. So it's good. So that we reach a point where we don't take our likes and dislikes very seriously, because we see that they are just ignorance. One method of spiritual practice, surrender, stands out foremost in both Ekhart's teaching and Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Eckhart regards surrender, saying yes to whatever is, as the primordial portal for entering into presence. Until one practices surrender, says Eckhart, one's life is run by the mind energy. It is through surrender that spiritual energy enters into one's life and transforms it. It's very beautiful. Until one practices surrender to the moment, you're being run by mental energy. But the moment you enter that zone where you're in a state of nati, Sanskrit word nati, submission to what is, then a spiritual energy starts entering. It is through surrender that spiritual energy enters into one's life and transforms it. From the viewpoint of Sri Aurobindo's yoga, purification, concentration, detachment, and rejection of the ego and desire are all useful aids for the discovery of one's inmost being. But the Sri Aurobindo's words, but the strongest, most central way is to found all such or other methods on a self-offering and surrender of ourselves and our parts of nature to the Divine Being. So Sri Aurobindo says the first necessity in my yoga is surrender. In Savitri there's that beautiful line, no, this light comes not by struggle or by thought. So that's why you can't think of presence, you can't think yourself to enlightenment, right? We discussed earlier that moments of enlightenment happen when you just relax, when you're present, and presence chooses to arise in you, right? So this light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence, the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. The unuttered word is truth, and truth is ineffable. You can't word it. Therefore, it's the unuttered word. It's something you realize, you see, but you can't really articulate it. Any articulation of truth will always be incomplete because truth is so vast. So we call truth the unuttered word. In Sanskrit, they just called it tat, that, because they didn't know how to word it. So they just said Om Tat Sat, Om, that truth. So that's what beautiful lines. You cannot achieve the light of what you are by struggling, by thinking. Therefore, the best thing is to quieten the mind as much as you can. This light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence, the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. Oh, now these beautiful words from one of my favorite books, I keep coming back to it, A Captive of Her Love by Janina. We all know Janina was in the ashram when mother was in her body. She came from Poland, very difficult circumstances to escape from Poland and finally come to Pondicherry and find refuge in the mother. It's a very, very beautiful book. She's titled it Captive of Her Love, and in the book, one of the first few pages, she says, here in the ashram, we are all captives of her love and we don't want to be anything else. So Janina says, I feel that I should not resist in any way, any wave. I mean, when mother sweeps this house, I must keep myself transparent and accept all the dirt and dust. Accept but not hold it, even for a moment. Only immediately pass it on, which means to her. So by dirt and dust, she means negative emotions, negative waves that pass in her. Almost automatically and with great speed. It's like a physical exercises or game. If I do not do it quickly enough, she cannot go on throwing it at me like balls, which I would suffer under a pyramid of products of my own ego from which she wants to free me. So I must throw the balls back to her for purification continuously. And if I do it quicker and quicker, she can throw more and more at me. So I feel now that it is much better to learn it, because the process of yoga will go much quicker. What has helped me most is the experience of throwing the ball back with great joy. But I can still do this only seldom. But I do not worry, I will learn it. It is like tennis. So she's saying that the moment some negative wave of emotion comes to me, I think of it like playing tennis with mother. Mother used to play lawn tennis with people, right? So she's throwing a ball at me, this emotion. So I don't have to get hit by it. I just have to throw it back at her quickly. And the faster I throw it, the more she'll keep throwing at me, so that more I learn to be cleansed and throw it all back at her. As for the surrender, Sri Aurobindo's words, very beautiful. As for the surrender, it is not inconsistent with the witness attitude, because we often feel Sri Aurobindo talks so much about being the witness, and he talks so much about active surrender. So somebody would have obviously asked, when I'm surrendering to the mother, I'm thinking of her, at that time, how can I be a witness? Yeah, I can either be in a state of prayer, aspiration and surrender, or I can be stepping back and witnessing. So Sri Aurobindo gives a beautiful reply. He says, as for the surrender, it is not inconsistent with the witness attitude. On the contrary, by liberating from the ordinary prakriti, it makes easier the surrender to the higher or divine power. Very often when this witness attitude has not been taken, but there is a successful calling in of the force to act in one of the first things the force does is to establish the witness attitude, so as to be able to act with less interference or immixture from the movements of the lower prakriti. So what he's saying is, when you really surrender to the mother and you open to her force and the force descends, one of the first things the descending force does is it establishes a witness attitude in you. Toll says presence arises in you, right? The same thing, when the force descends, automatically from being identified with thought, you're taken back to that consciousness beyond thought, the witness poise. So surrender can lead you to the witness, and the witness is actually an ultimately surrendered state. The witness is not surrendering to this or that. It's just surrendering to everything. It's allowing everything to come and go without interference, right? So in Sufism, they call the Purusha or the witness the Shaheed, the surrendered one. Doesn't interfere with anything, just allows everything to be. So yeah, witness and surrender are very, very connected actually. Again, very beautiful words from Sri Aurobindo's synthesis of yoga. When the individual soul is entirely at one in its being and knowledge with the Lord, and directly in touch with the original Shakti, the transcendent Mother. So when we are directly in touch with the Mother and the Lord, the supreme will can then arise in us too, in the high divine manner as the thing that must be, and is achieved by the spontaneous action of nature. So when we are one with the Mother, we obviously don't have thoughts of personal will. Then the supreme will arises in us and guides us to do exactly what needs to be done. Right now, when we are acting from our own mental will, we are always not sure, right? Am I doing right? Am I doing wrong? But when we are really quiet and that will arises within us to do this or do that, then it's a beautiful state. And it says, there is then no desire, no responsibility, no reaction. All takes place in the peace, calm, light, power of the supporting and enveloping and inhabiting this divine. So beautiful. So when you're really one with God and you're receiving the impulsion to action from then, you have no desire, no responsibility. It's as if you're really carried. Now, we are carried all the time, but imagine that lower hand carrying the upper hand. Imagine what joy if everything we do was that movement of just being carried. That's what he's saying. There is then no desire, no responsibility, no reaction. All takes place in the peace, calm, light, power of the supporting and enveloping and inhabiting divine. So Janina says, I call her my eternal holiday. So beautiful. She calls the mother the eternal holiday. All my life I have been longing for such repose. And now, since the worst burden, the mind, has lost its supremacy over me, I just feel as if I'm being carried in her arms. So beautiful to think of the mother as our eternal holiday, to just fall into her and let her carry us. Then whatever we are doing, we are not doing anything, we are resting. So now words from Savitri. All nature was a conscious front of God. So this nature that we wear, it's appearing to be ordinary, this, that, but it's a conscious front of God. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure. A plenitude of illimitable light. An authenticity of intuitive truth. A glory and passion of creative force, infallible, leaping from eternity. The moment's thought inspired the passing act. So this state that Sri Aurobindo says in Synthesis of Yoga, there is then no desire, no responsibility, no reaction. All takes place in the peace, calm, light, power of the supporting and enveloping and inhabiting divine. And that's what is being said in Savitri, a wisdom worked in all, a self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light. So in another line in Savitri, it's expressed differently. It says, even through the mists of mortal thought, infallible are thy mysterious steps. So even through the confusion of my thinking, that wisdom which is supporting me and guiding me from behind, infallible are its mysterious steps. So I remember, this is such a strange story. Once I was in Pondicherry and I was at Golconda, and a friend of mine had come to Golconda. He had just recovered from, actually he hadn't recovered from dengue, but he was one of those who would want to go to the mother's room every year on his birthday. So although he could hardly stand, somehow he made his way to Pondi, came to Golconda. I didn't know how bad he was because he looked very happy, and it was evening, and I asked him that, should I get you some dinner? Do you need dinner? No, I've eaten dry fruit. I'm fine. So I believed him. He looked fine. I went to the Samadhi. At night, I always go to the Samadhi. I'm walking to the Samadhi and a thought's coming. Let me call him Z. Z is hungry. So I said, but Z can't be hungry. He told me he's had dinner. So I took 2 more steps. Again, Z is very hungry, Z is very hungry, it wouldn't stop. And then I said, but this is irrational. But that voice was so loud that I looked around for food. Now around the ashram, everything at night is shut. That time there was no bread and chocolate and all. This was years ago. So then I went to A to B. A to B was also shutting. There was nothing. There was only some orange juice left. So I bought as much orange juice and I went to Zed's room. Now I don't like to disturb people at night at Golconda. You're not supposed to. But that voice kept hammering, and I very tentatively told Zed that, you know, I don't know why I got this thought that you're hungry and I've got you this juice, because there was nothing else. And he just took the juice and he teared up and he looked at mother and he said, I was so hungry that I was dizzy with hunger. So I said, but why didn't you tell me? But it's his policy. He never asks human beings for anything. And the mother always provides. So that's where I saw very clearly this example, that even through the mists of mortal thought, my thought was believing what he said, that he's full. Infallible are thy mysterious steps. What needed to be done, it kept hammering. So all nature was a conscious. We'll just end by reading these lines from Savitri. without explanation. All nature was a conscious front of God. A wisdom worked in all, self-moved, self-sure, a plenitude of illimitable light, an authenticity of intuitive truth, a glory and passion of creative force, infallible, leaping from eternity. The moment's thought inspired the passing act. We'll stop here. Let's conclude with 3 Ohms.